r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. Waiters of Reddit. What intense conversations have you awkwardly unintentionally interrupted? I waited tables for 10 years. Anywhere from a family restaurant to fine dining, I've done it. I'm 16 and this is my first ever serving job. I was on the Sunday morning breakfast shift, 8 AM, and this small family comes in. Mom, dad and son. They're not super cheerful or talkative. Not everyone can be a morning person, but you can tell there's some tension in the air. While serving them and pre-bussing, I caught a couple phrases or words the dad would say to the son. Such as, check your attitude or not in my house sort of thing. Fast forward, the family has their check and they are still talking in hushed, but tense tones. Next thing we know, the son tackles the father onto the table, breaking it instantly. They start struggling, wrestling, and screaming at each other on this broken table in the middle of a busy restaurant on a packed Sunday morning. All you hear is the son and father fighting since the restaurant goes silent once other customers realize what's going on. Stuff is flying everywhere, food and drink is flying onto other nearby tables. One of my co-workers had to start yelling for someone to call 911. Turns out the stepfather was sending his stepson to a boot camp for his behavioral issues. I guess the stepson didn't take the news all that well. After I retired from the military, I got a job as a defense contractor, but I had to wait a while for the security clearance process to do its thing. Takes a while. So I was working several jobs in the meantime to keep the bills paid. One of them was waiting tables. One Friday afternoon, a large group comes in, all fairly well dressed, and get a table together. It was obviously an office lunch, and I didn't pay them too much attention. It was the other waiter's table. That is, until I heard the topic of conversation. I was 2 tables over when I overheard what they were talking about, recognized several key words, etc. After about 3 minutes of listening, I could tell exactly which government agency they worked for, had a pretty good idea which office they were in, and could tell who was a Department of Defense civilian and who was a contractor. I had also determined that their conversation had bumped off the classified wall a few times, all while in a restaurant that was owned and operated by foreign nationals. And I know the owner had cameras with audio recording. I managed to catch one of the customers after he came out of the bathroom and strongly advised that he and his colleagues alter their subject of conversation. When he looked at me funny, I ran down the list of everything I had gleaned from their discussion just by eavesdropping from one table over, and watched the color drain from his face. 3 years later, I was sitting in a protecting secure information seminar, and I heard this exact story told by the guy giving the speech. Apparently the story of the semi-crazy white waiter in the Korean restaurant had left an impression. I once interrupted a granddaughter telling her grandfather she was pregnant. I could tell she was nervous from the second they walked in, enough that I clocked it and decided to pay extra attention in case something was wrong. And yeah, I was also a little curious. Things were pretty normal during the drink order. He got a beer, she got a Coke. I was making the rounds past all of my tables so I could take a bathroom break, and I was understandably distracted by the time I made it to them, my last table. I was literally walking up and pulling my customer smile as she said, "I'm pregnant. I think I'm gonna keep it." I'm just standing there, closer to her than Grandpa was. Grandpa's face lit up. He was in tears, and he was so happy to see me because he needed to order champagne and whatever dessert his granddaughter wanted so they could celebrate. He even insisted I have a glass with him. He let me finally go to the bathroom first though. Working as a host when I was a teen, I overheard a mother explain to her young daughter, maybe 6 or 7, why she would need to pull some of her hair out to get dinner for free. And no, this was not someone acting in desperation because they couldn't afford food. In the ensuing fake disgust and rampage aimed to my manager, the highlight of my night was watching him try to keep a straight face while explaining to her that no one in our kitchen staff happened to have long curly blonde hair. Had someone tried this at a place I worked? Everyone on shift had shaved their heads the day before at a charity thing. There was smooth skin all around as we had all big shaved. I had the kitchen all come out to show her. Boy was she pissed. One of my first jobs as a server, working a lunch shift years ago. Husband and wife come in and sit down. already in a bad mood and fighting. This goes on for about 10 minutes before I finally say screw it, I have to greet them and get started. I walk up to the table as they stare silently at each other and rage my opening. And as I open my mouth to greet them, the wife just spits out, "I want a divorce." When I was serving, I walked up to a couple at a table with their food. As I approach, the chick said to the dude, "You need to decide what you want your life to look like and define it." I turned around and chilled in the kitchen for a few minutes. Not precisely answering what the question is, but similar. I was serving a table 4 years ago, and everything was great, super friendly family. At one point, the kid was going on about a story that involved his toy. I wasn't paying attention due to trying to listen to his mother ask about something, and at one point he said, "My grandpa and I used to play all the time, but he's in the hospital with cancer." I said, "Oh, that's great," and I left. About halfway from leaving the table, I realized what he had said. I ran back and apologized, explaining that I didn't know what he said, and the parents said, "It's okay, it happens." I felt pretty bad the rest of the night. One time, I was super busy, dropping the credit card receipt off at a cocktail table, and the solo woman said, "Thanks so much, I had a great time." I initially wanted to say sure, and changed it in my mind at the last minute to no sweat. Except it came out no shit. I immediately cringed internally at what I said and zipped off. Got back behind the bar and the lady was waving and smiling as she was walking out. I think it was so loud in the restaurant that she couldn't be sure what I said, and since it was said with a smile on my face, she just assumed it was one of the normal polite platitudes. I went to take an order at a table with 2 teenage girls, probably 16-17. As I walked up to them, one of them was showing the other a dong pic, and she panicked and dropped the phone when she saw me. This time last year I ended up being the manager busboy waiter at the restaurant I was a partner in. We got killed off by COVID. We had a week where we had 4 different couples break up at one of our tables. 2 happened at the same table on consecutive days. The most brutal was a woman just destroying this guy, laying out all the things she had issues with. "Your car sucks. Your apartment is too small and messy. Your clothes look like crap. Your friends are buttholes," etc. He just sat there and took it. At some point I guess he had had enough and left. The lady stayed for one more drink and a lot of texts and then left. Crappy tipper too. A day later it was reversed. Dude was breaking up with the girl. He was a little more blunt and a little less cruel, simply saying, "I don't want to be with you anymore." She wanted to know why. His answer, "I don't have to justify my feelings." A version of this conversation continued for about 30 minutes until they paid and left. I don't think he successfully broke up with her. Related. There was one girl who clearly liked our place for dates. I think I saw her on 5 different dates over the course of 1 month. One of the later ones I wasn't sure if she wanted to be recognized as a regular and went through my normal menu spiel, and she cut me off saying I'll have her usual beer, and then recommending one of our other beers to her date, followed by "good to see you" to me. Made me both happy and sad. Happy because she noticed me, and sad because if I were 30 years younger and not happily married, she was 1000% my type. Weird ending, but okay lol. This will probably get buried, but no matter. One Valentine's Day, one of the couples I waited on seemed to be on a date that was really not going well. It was likely a first date, too. They barely spoke to each other, and things kind of just felt awkward. Anyhow, flash forward to the end of their meal. I had given them the bill a few minutes beforehand, and was back at the table with the card machine. As the guy's handing his card over, the girl says in the loudest, most pissy voice, "You'd better not think that just because you're paying, I would ever screw you." If I had thought it had been awkward before that, I had no idea. And I just had to hang around super uncomfortably while the guy entered in his details. It felt like time was going glacially slow. My sister was a waitress throughout dental school. She had some absolutely ridiculous stories. Here's one of them. One restaurant she worked at had a big problem with local hobos. They were crafty buggers. Some would sit at a table, drink water, eat bread, and then book it. But the staff was told, you have to seat customers unless they have been previously arrested on site. One night, my sister brought 3 or 4 hobos to a table, brought them all water, and kept an eye on them. Her manager told her not to take her eyes off that table. She walked up as she heard them discussing plans on how to rob the place. My sister is an eccentric person and has more than a bit of attitude. She walked right up and said, "So, what's this heist we're planning?" One of the hobos asked her if she wanted in on it. She replied with, "Tell you what, I'll go bring you all some bread on the house if you don't pull anything. Got it?" They agreed. She walked away to honor her end of the deal, just for about 10 seconds. When she came back, one of the hobos was urinating on the carpet, drawing attention, while the other 3 were raiding the buffet. The police were called, some hobos were arrested. She said they used to do this stuff just so they could get arrested and have free food and shelter. Was in a hospital's food service department, not a waitress. Those inside took patients' orders and brought them their food. I suppose that's close enough. I walked into a patient on her cell phone telling someone to put the body in the freezer so it doesn't rot until I'm home and can get rid of it. I decided not to ask. About 15-year-old girl talking to who I assumed to be her parents as I walked over to greet them. "You might be married to my mom, but that doesn't make you my dad." This isn't an intense conversation, but more so totally awkward. I was closing the restaurant and it was close to 1 AM. My only table left was sitting at a front booth. I was coming around the fireplace to check on them and before I knew it, all I could see was the woman's foot rubbing on the man's junk. Both staring deeply into each other's eyes. No words were had. More so a visual conversation. I turned around and walked away. I didn't know what else to do, since there was a mild foot job going on at my table. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. Have a nice evening.